I'm Digital74, this is Shovel Knight Plague of Shadows Any Percent. This video is intended as a submission to the Benelux Speedrunner Gathering Annual 2026. Long ago, the lands were untamed and roamed by legendary adventurers. Or so that cutscene tells me every time I start to run. This is Shovel Knight Plague of Shadows. It is one of 4 campaigns contained within Shovel Knight Treasure Trove, which was originally going to be just one game, but got overfunded so heavily during Kickstarter backing that they actually created 3 more campaigns after the first one, and this is the second of the 4, so the first extra campaign, featuring Plague Knight, our little bird-faced boy here. I think that's a mask, but I'm also not sure that we actually know for a fact that it's a mask. I think it's a mask. Either way, this is probably my favourite of the 4 campaigns, which is also why I've gone and picked it up for speedrunning. Broadly, it's a very straightforward game. There's not really much to speak of in terms of routing in a game like Shovel Knight, because it is just a level-based precision platformer, right? There's no backtracking or like item progression or anything like that. So when we're talking about speedrunning Shovel Knight, we're really talking about just sort of being good at the game. I'm not, but that's the basic idea, right? There's no sort of clever route through the game or anything like that. It's just movement and like boss fights and things, but just getting good at them. Plague Knight has a few basic mechanics that we're going to be using. First of all, he has a double jump, but he doesn't jump very high. Neither his first nor his second jump are particularly high, and in fact the two together are still less height than just Shovel Knight's big boing. So Plague Knight has to get his mobility from elsewhere, which is where the burst comes in. So when you throw a bomb, which is just your basic attack, you can hold the button to charge up a burst, and you'll see me doing this constantly and just releasing them, ideally with perfect timing to keep chaining them together. And so a burst gives you a bunch of upwards momentum, but also a bunch of sideways momentum if you do it while moving. And so we're going to use it not only to reach high places, in lieu of having an actually good jump, but also just for speed, just to get around faster even on a flat surface. So it's going to be quite important. Our first boss fight here, this is sort of a tutorial boss in the tutorial level. This is the Black Knight. The Black Knight sticks. I detest this fight. It went quite well here, where I managed to sort of chain a bunch of bomb hits together at the start to really get through most of his health. But as you can see, it got very difficult to hit him for quite a minute there. Black Knight really likes to camp. It's incredibly frustrating, especially because we have to fight him 3 times over the course of the game, and he really doesn't get any better. You just have to chase him around the screen a lot of the time, and it's really very annoying. But yeah, that's our first level. That's the plains. It's very straightforward, just sort of little tutorial level. And now we just got a couple of cutscenes here in the village that's going to introduce, all of the new cast and your team of alchemists and whatever that the Plague Knight has in his corner. Then we don't really give too much about the story, right, for the speedrun, but we do have to go through this whole sequence. It is in fact mandatory. There's Shovel Knight up there. We'll see him again later, don't worry. Shovel Knight fans have plenty to look forward to. He's going to kick my ass tremendously on 2 occasions. But for the time being, we meet Mona, and we head down into the Potionarium, which is sort of our base of operations here. We're never actually going to explore any part of the Potionarium. There's a whole little area with like NPCs and shops and side quests and things, and we're not going to do any of that. We're just going to leave every time, which is after every level. You might have noticed during the plains, but also just there, that I picked up some tonics. Those are the little potions that I can grab out of like dirt mounds and things. Those are just a way of healing, which, might need if you fall in a pit. No, but they extend your maximum health and also refill a hit point while they're at it, but it's temporary. If you die, the buff goes away. So generally, I actually won't really use my tonics more or less at all, because the main way that you die in this run is not by damage, it's by falling into a pit, or otherwise getting instantly killed. So the tonics are not useless, not at all, they're quite useful, but they are quite particular. They're really only useful for boss fights, so generally I'll only use them for boss fights. Everywhere else, mostly ignorable. We are also going to get actual permanent health upgrades throughout the game. Conveniently, unlike the other Shovel Knight games, we don't have to go out of our way to get those as Plague Knight. They happen just during full story cutscenes, so that's a convenient little thing. But Plague Knight also starts, I believe, with less health than the other characters do. I believe the others start with 5. And can get up to 10, whereas Plague starts with 4 and then only gets up to 7, but he's got the whole health tonic mechanic. I believe those are the numbers. Either way. Primal Keep here, this level, is not particularly interesting over the plains. It's really sort of a second tutorial level where it's a little bit longer and it's got more involved mechanics and things. But broadly, it's still very simple and very easy. And so these books here are the main mechanic for the second half, where if you hit the book, it spawns like platforms. We're mostly just going to ignore those. I will play it a little bit safe here, because the boiling oil can sometimes knock you into the pit. The boiling oil itself, not scary in the slightest, but the pit, now that is a problem. But that already brings us to King Knight again. So the pace here right at the start is breakneck, right? We are going just from boss to boss incredibly rapidly. It's only been 2 minutes since we fought the Black Knight. But that's going to slow down a bit as the levels get longer, and especially as they get harder and I end up falling into more holes, we're going to have a less high density of boss fights. King Knight is our first Knight of the Order. Black Knight is just a guy who's just like around, like I said, kind of being a dipshit. While King Knight is actually belongs to the Order of No Quarter, the Enchantresses, who's a sort of our main villain. The Enchantress's, elite order of lieutenants. And Plague Knight's actually also in the order, but he's running a secret plot of his own. It's a whole thing. King Knight here is kind of pathetic. He's canonically, like, I think 18 years old or something. He's just like a child, practically, who usurped this throne. And his boss fight is also very easy. It's really not very impressive. The confetti is honestly the most annoying thing, because it's kind of just everywhere. We're going to be seeing that again later, because we will have to refight all of the bosses at the end, Mega Man style, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, again, Primal Keep, not a particularly interesting level. The Lich Yard, much the same. The game is sort of split off into 4 sections. There's this first section here, which is the Plains, Primal Keep, and the Lich Yard. Then the second section has the Plague Knight level, the Mole Knight level, and the Treasure Knight level. Of course, in the Plague Knight campaign, we won't actually be fighting Plague Knight, but we will be playing through that same area. And then the third area has Tinker Knight, Propeller Knight, and Polar Knight. And the final area has sort of the final, like, story-based levels that aren't part of the same sort of structure. But that first area here, where you can play the Lich Yard and Primal Keep in whichever order you want, obviously, all of these areas are sort of internally free. These 2 levels are really not crazy. The Lich Yard is a little bit harder than Primal Keep, I'd say, because it's just got more pits and spikes and things and more annoying enemies, but on the whole, it's still not that bad. Gives me a chance to talk about our second most important movement ability after bursting, which honestly I wouldn't say double jumping is nearly as important as either of these. Well, it probably is. But double jumping really is for course correction more than anything. You kind of just use it to make sure you don't die. But anyway, no, what's a really important movement ability that we have access to is damage boosting. And I don't just mean taking a hit and then using your iframes to get through stuff. I would call that damage tanking from here on out. But rather damage boosting in the sense of the knockback that you take when you get hit by something. Right? And that's quite significant in Shovel Knight, but you can kind of affect where you go. If you rapidly turn around right before you hit something, then usually you get damage boosted backwards by most things in most situations, though it can go forwards as well, so you kind of have to figure out, you have to know, right, what's going to happen. I'm not quite dialed in on that all the time just yet, but usually you get damage boosted backwards, so if you turn around very quickly before you hit something, you can actually get damage boosted forwards, quote unquote, which is obviously very useful to get through whatever hit you very rapidly. So I use that just absolutely everywhere. For example, in Primal Keep, there's the Griffin mini-bosses. I used it there to just get through them and past them without needing to fight them at all. And in the Plains, much the same with the Bubble Dragon. So we're going to be using that technique a lot in order to just squeeze past things that we're not supposed to. So that's probably the main thing you're going to see me do. It's also where a lot of the optimization for this game is. If you watch, actual high-level runners, because again, I'm fairly new. If you watch high-level runners play this, they just do this absolutely everywhere. They're just like, fraction of a second, they turn around just to boost through like every enemy. It's just boing, boing, boing. It's really cool. Right here at the end of one of the story sequences, we get a little cutscene with Plague Knight and Mona where something happens in the plot, and it's all cutesy because it's a romance plot here, right? It's they both have a crush on each other, but they can't say it, and it's very silly. It's fun. I like it. Like I said, this is probably my favorite of the campaigns. But anyway, we get one of those story cutscenes and then a health upgrade at the end of every sort of chapter here, every sequence of the map, right? Every section. But that brings us over to the Explodatorium. This is all going incredibly rapidly, but the Explodatorium again is a Plague Knight's place. This is sort of his castle, his keep, where he normally hangs out when he's not busy with his secret plots. And we are playing as Plague Knight, so you might be wondering, well, what's the boss at the end of the level going to be? And it's going to be Shovel Knight. Like I alluded to before, we do have to fight Shovel Knight in this one. And that's the gimmick here, is Plague of Shadows and Shovel of Hope, that is to say Shovel Knight's campaign, play out actually at the same time, canonically. And so the Plague Knight boss fight gets replaced with a Shovel Knight boss fight, but they're canonically the same moment, which is quite cool. I'm quite fond of this level, if only for that. I think it's cute. I do actually hate this level in more or less every other way possible. This level has a lot of bullet hell elements that are very annoying to deal with, and that's a common thing for Shovel Knight, but I don't know, this one just doesn't sit right with me. And the Shovel Knight boss fight itself is just the absolute worst. You'll see why later. If you thought Black Knight was a camper, goodness, you should see Shovel. He's horrendous. Anyway, this is the Alchemeister. He's not going to last very long. This is the Explodatorium mid-boss. I'm not sure why we're fighting any of our own henchmen. It really doesn't make sense. I'll be honest, I've already forgotten how they explain it, if they even do at all. But either way, I believe right here I'm going to be stupid and die, if I remember correctly. I think I ran this a few days ago. I think I'm going to just get hit by some fire and die, as I recall. No? Wow, look at that. I'm a gamer. Alright. So I didn't take the checkpoint after Alchemeister, which is not, like, all that important of a checkpoint, really. It's not that hard of a section, but if you do mess it up, obviously you have to fight the mid-boss again, which really stinks. So I'm glad I didn't have to do that. Right here I'm going to go under this platform instead of over, because that way I don't have to deal with that henchman up there, which is much better. And then get the health refill before the boss fight. Off to the right here, there's a secret room that doesn't exist in Shovel of Hope, and it's like Plague Knight's secret little stash or whatever. It's cute. But again, no real reason to go there. In any percent, we're not really going to get any kind of item upgrades or anything like that. We're barely going to use our Arcana at all, so we're also never going to get a magic upgrade or any of that. We're only actually going to acquire any Arcana, I think, in another 3 levels from now. We're just going to get one of them that's going to speed up boss fights, and that's it. Speaking of speeding up boss fights, I really wish that I could speed up the shovel fight, because this guy, he just runs around like a headless chicken, and I can't make any sense of it. But he's also invincible half the time. He has his horn attack and the amulet that makes, or the locket that makes him invincible for a little bit. He's tiny, he's fast. He has a tendency to run away from you rather than towards you. He can deflect your bombs, which no other boss can do. And just generally, this fight is an absolute hassle. Watching high-level runners do it, it looks absolutely sick. But I'm not very good at it yet. So that's something I've still got to learn. I hope that before BSG Annual, this is one of the main things I want to focus on learning how to do properly, the Shovel Knight fight. Because I think there's a lot of room for improvement there. Anyway, having defeated Shovel Knight, he then defeats us with a cheap shot in the back while we're celebrating. But then luckily we get to collect his essence afterwards anyway by just being really sneaky when he's taking a nap. It's a little cutesy cutscene there to explain all that away. And we need his essence because we're collecting all of these knights' essences to brew a powerful potion. Because Plague Knight is insecure and he thinks if he can be the most powerful sorcerer in the world, then Mona will want him. And it's like I said, it's extraordinarily silly, but it's fantastic. We're going to move on to the Lost City. This is the Mole Knight level. This is a fun one because with Plague Knight's ridiculous mobility, with the bursts and a little bit of air stalling when you throw a bomb and the double jump and all this stuff, you can kind of make light work of this level. So the way that Plague of Shadows works is actually different from the Spectre Knight and King Knight campaigns. Plague of Shadows, you actually play through more or less the same levels as with Shovel Knight, but they're like slightly changed to make things work. And then there's like bonus areas everywhere scattered about that are actually Plague Knight exclusive, built specifically for him. But most of the levels that we're playing through are not actually built for Plague Knight, and so you can cheese through things, and that's fully just by design. That's just the way that the campaign works. And using the bursts, and sort of you can almost fly in many cases, right? Like you can look at this and see sort of what I'm talking about. I didn't have to do any of the bouncy puzzles there that you would have to do with Shovel. And so Lost City in particular is a great showcase of just like how much we can skip and ignore. All of this lava is just like not relevant to me. Oh dear, oh no. Well, that was... Yeah, so about that lava, no, you can skip over most of it, but obviously if you fail, then, well, it is still lava, it's just instant kill. Like I said, there's a lot of instant kill stuff in this game, that's the main way you die, usually. So, really, the trick is not to do that, to just not hit the lava and the spikes and the pits and whatnot. Which means not being a dingus. But anyway, what a dingus, look at that. Idiot. Here's another cutesy little damage boost. I just stand in front of him and wait for him to shoot, and then I get boosted backwards straight through him. That sort of stuff. It's really cute. Right there, I was trying to turn around so the birder would boost me forwards, but I missed it. There's a lot of that going on. Mole Knight coming up is a pretty interesting boss fight, actually. If you do it right, you can actually skip. He has a big attack where he goes invincible for like 5 seconds or more. You can actually skip that. If you hit him enough beforehand, he won't have the time to get to it, and he'll be dead already. So that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to just absolutely massacre his health bar. And mostly we're getting there, it looks like. So now it's just a matter of finding him in the mounds, and there we go. So doing that, I don't know, you save maybe like 10 seconds by just being fast in the first place. Much harder than I made it look, actually. That was some pretty good bomb placement by me, so we got hit by basically everything all the time. It's quite hard to do. It's quite easy to mess up, so I'm quite happy with that. Like I was alluding to earlier, I recorded this run maybe 3 or 4 days ago. I don't really remember it very well. I've done more runs since, so it's, you know, it's hard to tell sort of what happened on this one exactly. Right, so I'm along for the ride with you here as I'm recording commentary. Anyway, onto the Iron Whale. So the Iron Whale is this submarine. This is the water level of the game. We are going to be floating. So we jump extra high when in water, but you also sink really slowly. And so there's some really crazy movement that you can do. And with Plague Knight, if you time your bursts just right underwater, you can actually just gain height, or not gain height, but like sustain height indefinitely. And so you can actually fly in the underwater sections of this level, which is pretty cool. It mostly doesn't come into play because there is still ground to stand on in most places. But like, yeah, it's possible. Nice damage boost there to get past the eel easier. Very cool. And then we just keep on going. I tried to do a similar thing there, but unfortunately missed it, so now we just have to do a little backup strat. Missed that too. So now we're improvising. Missed that too. Anyway. Goodness me. This game is hard, by the way. me being me, I know that at times in this video I'm going to go on and on about how I'm new and I'm not very good at the game yet, and so like, you know, you should look up better runners and all this stuff, and you should, because it's dope, but also, the game's just hard. I've got to be a little bit nice to myself. This game is incredibly difficult. I'm just glad that I can get it in under an hour at this point. It's pretty cool. Again, it's not crazy, but it's very cool. This here fish is the bane of my existence. There's this whole chase sequence where it's like, oh no, there's like barely any ground to stand on and he's shooting stuff at you, oh no, oh goodness, oh gracious. And it's just kind of irrelevant when you Plague Knight. A Shovel Axe, actually kind of scary. Plague can just fly. No, but the mini-boss fight itself, once you get into the arena, this is just the worst. I despise this. Because it's possible to kill him so quickly that he never even does this, he never rushes across the screen. But that's quite difficult, and I never get it. And so I'm there, and I just feel like I'm slow every time, because it could be really fast if you get it right. Sort of like the Mole Knight thing, right? I don't particularly like that boss fight. Anyway, to back up out of the water now, so our movement's back to normal. I'm going to need to adjust a bit. It's very disconcerting the way that you go in between the two sort of types of movement in this level. This guy's a real pain. If you do it real good, you can also damage boost straight past him, but I don't usually even go for that one at all, just because of how difficult it is. Because it's such a tight corridor, I don't want to mess anything up. Just get stuck behind him and get hit again. You know, I'd rather just take the safe line, as it were. And that already brings us basically to the end of the level. So this game just goes by crazy quickly a lot of the time. We're doing, what is it? 14 levels? No. 12 levels in an hour, right? So no level is any longer than 6 minutes. Most of them are shorter, because there's also bits in between. It really goes by. And Treasure Knight, especially as a boss fight, can also go by rather quickly if you do it right. So let's see how we get on. Generally in boss fights, I want to be just as close to the boss as possible at any given time, because Plague Knight's range, while better than Shovel Knight's, because, you know, he has a ranged attack in the first place, it still isn't all that great. The bombs don't travel very far, so you do still want to be very close to your enemy. And so, for example, with a fight like Treasure Knight, where he can sometimes go all the way across the screen with his little zippy moves, or he can just sit in a corner shooting projectiles, we'd really rather see the latter. Now, Treasure Knight has a bit more RNG than most bosses. A lot of bosses have long scripted sections, but Treasure Knight can kind of do, 3 or 4 different things. But that was pretty good. That was a pretty fast fight. Pretty happy with that. This is another one of those cute story moments where the lever is stuck and then the lights go out, and I have to assume that Plague Knight and Mona almost kiss, and then Percy the horseman shows up and he's like, I fixed the power, everything's fine, and it's, again, incredibly silly. I love this game so much. It's perfectly willing at all times to commit to the bit, and I appreciate it for that. It's just such a fantastic game. If you've not played Shovel Knight, or if you've only played the original Shovel Knight and not any of the subsequent campaigns, you've got to go do it. It's really just tremendous. It's absolutely fantastic game. All-timer, honestly. Instant classic. Anyway, this here's the flying machine. This is by far the hardest level we're going to be playing today. This is the level that I die on the most. This is the level that I lose the most time on. This is just generally the worst level in basically every way. It is also a very cool and fun level, but it is just incredibly difficult. So the main reason for that is that there's pits absolutely everywhere, spikes in a good number of places as well, and the main gimmick of the level is wind in a variety of ways. There's enemies that create wind, there's also environment that creates wind, the fans down there, and there's just wind sometimes in some rooms, just perpetually wind everywhere. And so it gets really difficult, not in this room, embarrassingly enough, but it gets really difficult sometimes to control your movement because you're being pushed around, blown around, right? And so this level is just incredibly volatile. You just die everywhere, and sometimes you can't even really tell why. We're gonna come up on one of the worst offenders of that in just a minute. For right now, we've got an easier couple of rooms for a little bit. This mini boss is kind of just whatever, like most mini bosses are. It kind of just dies pretty quickly. I'm gonna take this checkpoint just for safety. not really needed, and it's a bit out of the way, but it's a flying machine, so I'm choosing not to find out. Right? We're going to move on here. This is the only Arcana that we're ever going to get, so we went slightly out of our way into a bonus area to buy the Staff of Striking off of Chester, one of the only Arcana that's any use for a speedrun, because it's just a really fast source of damage. It's got no range at all, but it allows you to get in 3 to 5 hits worth of damage in a fraction of a second, much faster than you ever could with your bombs. So it's quite useful, really only for bosses, but it is quite useful for bosses. So that's nice. I believe I'm going to die right here. I think I'm just going to fall in a hole, because there's 3 of these little wind guys, and it's just the worst. Yeah, there we go, right? I tried to skip past them. I got a damage boost, I got through them, and then I tried to burst over. But obviously I messed it up. This is probably the worst room in this level. Maybe the worst room in the entire run. It's just, there's these cannonballs, and then there's these guys, and it's just horrid. Like right there, I didn't have a double jump. I thought I still had a double jump, but I didn't, so I couldn't get over. And you could go out of your way, take it slow, and just kill these guys, but like, that's high-key very difficult as well, so there's barely any point to it. So right there, I finally sort of got something, and just managed to get past them. So that gets us into a long and boring auto-scroller, which is not something this game does very frequently, but it happens often enough, especially in the later parts of the game. I think there's at least 4 of these. So we're really just waiting for the screen to get all the way to the right. So in the meantime, I'm going to have Plague Knight wiggle his stick. Wiggle that stick. Anyway, as soon as this ladder shows up, we can leave, so that's enough of that. Having wiggled our stick, we can move on, get another checkpoint, and then kill 2 rats. Ideally not kill ourselves. There we go, good. The amount of times that I've accidentally bursted into those spikes instead of killing the rat is, well, it's embarrassingly high to say the least. Good save there. I was almost getting blown back into the previous room by that fan, but managed to pick myself up. This room isn't technically an auto-scroller, but it feels like one because you just have to wait for the wind cycles. We do a tiny little skip here where you're intended to use like at least 4 wind cycles to get through this, but you can actually only use 2, and it's pretty easy. So that's nice. This room's a little bit more problematic, but I think we should be okay. So this one, instead of going up and down, it goes sideways and then up. And so you can use the sideways wind to get a whole bunch of extra movement speed and actually just breeze past it. That's pretty cool. And now, having eaten that food, there we go, we can go ahead and fight Propeller Knight, which is not the hardest boss fight. It's really not all that bad, but it is pretty annoying. A newfound Staff of Striking is very useful here, though. It's purposely designed for it, where when Propeller Knight dashes at you is when he's vulnerable, but otherwise he'll block bombs with his sword. And so, while he's dashing through you, you want to hit him, because enemies that have that little red glow about them from when they've been hit don't have an active contact hitbox. And so if he's dashing through you, but you hit him with a staff, well, he'll go through you, but you won't take damage. So you can sort of do the staff to one side, then to the other side, and back again, as he's dashing back and forth through you, in order to get some free damage in. It's much easier than with bombs. So that's quite nice. We're going to be doing similar things with the staff on most bosses coming up, but also occasionally just mashing it for damage. Anyway, after you beat a boss, you can't die anymore, so I fell down in that hole on purpose to make it look as though Plague Knight was just fully gone while the collection cutscene played. And you can see, if you do that, that the death plane is really, really high up, because Plague Knight is just standing on it. And the essence, the sparkles that come off the side of Propeller Knight's essence, you can still see those. Those are still on screen. So Plague Knight's like right there, right off the border of the screen, which is really funny. Anyway, this is Black Knight 2. This is our second of the 3 Black Knight fights. He's more powerful now. He's got a normal-sized boss health bar and a couple of extra moves, slightly different behavior, and I think he's also just a bit faster, which is very annoying because his general strategy remains exactly the same. Camp you out and wait for you to die of old age. Now, luckily, we have the Staff of Striking, so we can kind of get him in a corner. You see what I was going for there, where you just get him in a corner and hit him repeatedly, but it's obviously still difficult. and now he's just at 1 hit, but I can't get it. That's always the problem with the Black Knight, is he's all over the place. He's so difficult to hit. Anyway, it's still not that bad. The Shovel is way worse, because he actively, he has extra health and he goes invincible and things, but Black Knight's also quite annoying. Anyway, after that cutscene, Mona runs away and we don't know where she is. Percy takes her place as our little sidekick here. We're not going to spend any more time talking to him than we have been spending talking to Mona, really. If anything, less. But, yeah, Mona will be back. Worry not, Mona fans. Next up is I forget what it's called, the Clockwork Tower, that's it. The Clockwork Tower, which is where Tinker Knight lives. This one's neat. The whole thing here is obviously the theme is clockwork, so there's cogs and gears and machinery. And so the mechanics are mostly like conveyor belts and switches and that sort of stuff. And Plague Knight is able to usually just fully ignore all of that by just flying past it. You don't really have to interact with any of the cycle-based machinations happening in this level. Which is awesome. These are called Kine Knives. I don't know why. I don't know what that means. But that's what they're called. They're sort of everywhere in this level, and normally they're just the worst. That is to say, as Shovel Knight. Because as Shovel Knight, you don't have a lot of freedom of movement, right? You can kind of just jump around, and you've got very limited speed. And so Kine Knives just sort of being somewhere means that entire area is now just fully inaccessible, and you kind of can't platform around very well. Really cool damage boosting strat here, by the way, to get out of this auto-scroller sooner. No, but as Plague Knight, when there's a Kine Knife in a given place, you just say, okay, and you just go around it. You just go over it, or under it, or side to side, and then you shake your hips or something. And then you just get past it, which is very frequently the case with Plague Knight in the way that it isn't with Shovel. And that's like I was talking about before, is these levels are fundamentally not designed for Plague Knight. And it's incredibly fun, right? That's, I think, the reason I like this campaign so much, is you really get to sort of go God mode, as it were. It's still difficult, because it's just a difficult game. Mostly because it's just so punishing and just kills you instantly half the time. But you do get to just fly, right? And so, for example, a room like this one is like really tense for Shovel Knight, where you have to jump between these platforms perfectly in order to not die, and there's a death plane rising to meet you. Plague Knight is just like, you can just go up. We're really only limited by the auto-scroller. That's the real thing for Plague Knight. It's just the auto-scroller's so slow. We're already to the end of the Clockwork Tower again. I'm not even going to grab that Griffin, I don't think. And then we're just going to move on. The Tinker Knight fight consists of 2 phases. There's Tinker Knight 1, where he's just in his workshop and he just throws wrenches at you and he's kind of pitiful. That phase only has half the normal health. It's dead. You can see the Staff of Striking being quite useful there. But then the real fight, Tinker Knight 2, gets in his big mecha suit and you have to hit him right in the head because the suit itself is invincible. The suit is also scalable. It's got geometry on it that we can stand on, and so that's where we're going to be. We're just going to stand up here and throw bombs at him. I might still use the staff at some point. If you can get directly next to Tinker Knight, the staff does still work. It's just a little bit more awkward to set up when he's not just, walking off the ground like a normal person. Come down here and let me punch you like a man. Anyway, these are the 2 shortest members of the Order of No Quarter, in case you were curious about that, which I don't know why you would be, but they are. You'll see later, they're going to be all side by side. It's quite obvious. It's great. In any event, that's Tinker Knight's essence. And with that, we are moving on to the stranded ship. I'm trying to remember the names of the levels. Bloody impossible. But yeah, we're moving on to the stranded ship, which is Polar Knight's lair, the last of the Order of No Quarter levels, so the last knight that we have still to recruit. The stranded ship's main mechanics are ice and snow. So ice obviously is slippery, it gives you ice physics. We are mostly going to be Plague Knighting our way straight past that and fully ignoring it. The snow is a little bit more relevant. I'm not talking about these snow blocks here, but the ones that we're going to see later. which just sort of hang in the air until you touch them. Plague Knight actually has to touch them, the bombs don't work. And then they cover up spikes on the ground once you touch them, sort of allowing the spikes to act as platforms rather than instant death. And that is going to be obviously very important, because otherwise we can't make it through some of these later rooms, but also quite difficult to traverse, because it's very easy to occasionally miss some snow, or misstep even once you've placed the snow, and just immediately die. It's quite worrying. These here, like cockatrice platforms, are also a relevant part of the level for Shovel Knight, where he would knock them around and use the platforms that they spawn to traverse the area. Plague Knight can't move those platforms, they won't obey him, but of course we can fly, so it's fine. We don't need them anyway. There's also a lot of ladders in this level, and a lot of these hammer throwy guys on the ladders, which are incredibly irritating. They throw hammers one side then the other, and they just sort of continue like that. But there's a lot of cases where they're floating above pits or spikes, like this guy right here. And it's so easy to sometimes just get hit by a single hammer and immediately die at full health. Like right here, right? This whole area is just pits all the way down, and there's just 4 of these blokes. And it's a pain. But usually it's fine to just damage boost past them, as long as you just hold your burst, then you can recover afterwards. But you do have to be careful. It's pretty easy to just die there. There's a cool damage boost there where I could have very smoothly fallen down that chute, but unfortunately I missed it. It's fine. This last area of the level is where the snow really kicks up, so this is just all spikes, and you just have to hit the snow before you can progress. I'm going to try to Plague Knight my way through it and really just cheese it, but it is a bit tricky there, so I had to take an emergency stop with that little bit of snow just to make sure I didn't die. But that brings us to Polar Knight. This fight's quite fun. It's also a mess, but it's quite fun. So in phase 1 he just kicks balls at you, and when you hit him he starts running across the screen. You have to make him run 3 times, or hit him for a certain amount of health before then, but usually you make him run 3 times. And then he'll jump up, and now he'll start breaking the floor, revealing spikes below. Those spikes are just as instant death as they were in the normal level, worry not. But now at this point, what you usually do is you just take a hit from him, and I didn't really do it very much during this fight, but you just like land on his head, take contact damage, and now you can stand on the spikes for a bit, and then you just beat the shit out of him with the Staff of Striking. It's actually a very fun fight, because you have to manage your invulnerability timer and really know, like, okay, well I'm about to, because I'm standing on spikes, right? If my invulnerability goes away, I just instantly die. So you have to know when to jump. So now you're just above the spikes, but still in Polar Knight's hitbox, and you get hit by him instead, and that's fun. So it's a fun one to manage. Luckily, we'll be doing it again, because like I said at the start, there will be a boss gauntlet at the end of all this, where we sort of fight all the bosses again. So we will be doing it again, and I'll get more of a chance to show it off. So yeah, here's our ultimate potion. It's not quite finished yet. Plague Knight also wants the Enchantress's essence for it, not just all of the Knight's essences. So he's going to be going to the Tower of Fate, where at this very moment Shovel Knight is trying to rescue his lost love. And meanwhile we're there to make a drink. It's also a love thing, but he doesn't know that. Anyway, this is the Tower of Fate entrance, or Tower 1. Tower 1, not my favourite level. I kind of despise this thing, actually. It's got a bit of an auto-scroller in a minute, but also it's just got some of the most irritating platforming that we've had to do yet. Which makes sense. It's supposed to be sort of, you know, the game turning it up a notch, right? The very end, the tough bit. But yeah, mostly it's just annoying, really. So there's a lot of mechanics from all around the rest of the game. There's this falling lava from the Lost City. There were the books that make the platforms from Pridemore Keep earlier. There's these fish from the Lost City and the fairies from the Exploratorium. Oh goodness, what else is in this level? There's a lot of stuff in this level. The first 2 levels of the Tower of Fate are really sort of a showcase of, you know, all of this stuff. In the first level, we mostly get mechanics from Pridemore Keep, the Lich Shard, the Exploratorium, and the Lost City, and then in the second level, we get mostly mechanics from whatchamacallit, the Iron Whale Clockwork Tower, the Flying Machine, and Stranded Ship. So for example, here we have the chandeliers as well from Primal Keep. Earlier we also saw the pots with the lids that shoot up from the Exploratorium. There's really like a compilation, and it's very cool. It's a very fun way to do it. Again, I find this level a bit irritating at times because it's just incredibly difficult. But it's a very cool mechanic. So here we have the silhouetted perspective from the Lich Shard. Again, a returning mechanic. All of these are returning enemies as well. You can use the rain to figure out where the path through this little maze is, but obviously I already know, but it's still a useful indicator. And then there's one of these annoying wind guys from the Flying Machine, which is going to get in my way. And this tonic doesn't want to get in my pocket. There we go, we just go straight past him, and that gets us to the end of the level. But of course every level ends in a boss fight, so here is Black Knight 3. He is imbued with power from the Enchantress, and is intent on stopping us. This is probably the most annoying of the 3 Black Knight fights, because he does this move. He just goes invincible for like 5 seconds straight, and he has a bit of a startup to it, where you can interrupt it and prevent him from beginning the attack. But it would require you to react so quickly and to already be basically directly next to him. You don't usually actually get to make use of that, so it's quite an annoying fight for that reason. Like, case in point, right? You have such a tiny little window, and in that case my bomb also got blocked by the rock that he put in the ground earlier, but even then it's just very tough. And as is the tradition with the Black Knight fights, he is at 1 health, and it took me like 5 seconds to actually hit that last 1 health out with him. He still camps. He still camps. Ideally in this fight, I would end the fight as far to the right of the screen as possible, such that this little walking animation would take a little less long. Similarly, in the earlier 2 Black Knight fights where he runs away at the end, you ideally want the Black Knight to end up as far to the right as possible, so that takes less long. A bunch of little optimizations in cutscenes like that. Mostly those 3, but there are others as well, I think. If you stand closer to Shovel Knight when he dies, he'll take a little bit less long to hit Plague Knight with his shovel afterwards. That sort of thing. There's a handful of these. Tower 2, like I said, mostly mechanics from sort of the second half of the Order of No Quarter levels. So right here we are underwater, like on the Iron Whale. And then we've got the Clockwork Rats from the Clockwork Tower. And God, I think in a minute we're getting fans and things as well, if I recall. This is very Lost City though. There's lava and falling lava as well. So it is all still blended together a bit, but it's mostly from the second half, as I recall. Oh yeah, in a second we're getting the Cockatrice platform from Stranded Ship, which, again, Plague Knight can't interact with. He can't move it side to side, so instead we are going to go over the top. Yes, that's intentional. You have to go up there in order to make it through this part. You can also go over all the rest of it, but unfortunately I fell down, so I kind of just had to make the best of it. Ideally I would just go over though. Here's the conveyor belts from the Clockwork Tower. Again, everything's sort of coming together. And then here we've got a really long auto-scroller that we're just going to have to wait for, mostly. There's not a whole lot to say about it. I do have exactly 6-7 alchemy coins right now, so I will be collecting exactly 2 more and then avoiding all of the remainder. I mathed out to see if I could ever maybe do that during the recording for BSG here, and I figured I probably could, but it means that this entire time I've actually been going out of my way not to collect certain cipher coins, because so many of them are just directly in your path when you are just speeding through the game. Like, you just burst in an appropriate location to cross a gap and you just get a cipher coin. I would be hard-pressed to do a run of this game where I get less than, I don't know, 50 cipher coins, because it just makes you so slow. It could be a fun little bonus category side thing to try sometime, but just going through any percent, you kind of just pick up like at least 60 cipher coins, but easily more, just by playing the game. So right now, these last 2, I'm just going out of my way to dodge so that I can stay at the total of 69. Those are also the last 2 cipher coins. There are no cipher coins in the last level of the game, so no more risks there. Ow! Ow! What the hell, bro? Anyway, this is the boss refight sequence. So we are going to fight all of the Knights of the Order of No Quarter, except Plague Knight himself, obviously, in a random order, and then Shovel Knight at the end, because he only wakes up once all the rest of them are defeated. So we're starting off with Treasure Knight. It didn't go great, but it still went better, I think, than the first one, so it's pretty good. We'll take it. Then there's King Knight, being his annoying, hoppy self. This is easily one of the worst fights for the refights. Not because the fight is difficult, the fight is rather easy, but because if you don't beat him fast enough to prevent the confetti attack from happening, which luckily here I did, then the confetti will carry on for a bit into the next fight, making the other fight disproportionately difficult, which is incredibly annoying. Polar works the same as he did before, where he's going to shovel up the snow and then cause spikes to appear and all that stuff. So we're going to do more or less the same thing. This time I think I will actually end up doing more of the damage boosting shenanigans that I described before. I tried to damage boost towards him there by quickly turning around, but unfortunately messed it up. Yeah, so here, I'm just standing on the spikes, and then I get hit on purpose to make sure that I don't die when I land back on the ground. So that's a fun strat for that fight. Spectre Knight gets a good bit easier from having the Staff of Striking. Most bosses do. It's just easier to like keep him in a corner and get good damage in when you've got this item. But this fight still stinks a bit because you still do have to chase him around the same way we did before. For example, right there, I just fully didn't have the right read on where he was going. Unfortunately, couldn't get any damage in on an otherwise nice cycle. But there you see the Staff of Striking just absolutely tearing its health apart, which is pretty nice. That item rips. It's genuinely very useful. I mean, that's why we go out of our way for it, of course. But it's a really nice thing to have for boss fights. Like, there goes Tinker Knight. Oh dear, who brings a mech to dinner? Honestly, where did you even keep this thing? We don't have that kind of room. Like, did you break down a wall? What? How did you get this in here? I'm gonna have to take this up with management. Anyway, bit aside, this fight is perfectly identical to the first Tinker Knight fight, only the cutscene in between is a little bit less long. So, you know, that's nice, I suppose. Back to Propeller, this is probably the most annoying of the fights, just like by his individual merit. Outside of Shovel, anyway. Just because, again, he has a habit of blocking bombs with his sword, and then he starts flying up into the air, and he's difficult to reach. But if you do it right, and if you get a little bit of good RNG, it is possible to actually deplete over half of his health before he even starts flying into the air. I didn't quite get it, but I did get a good amount of damage. He's spending so long up there. How long, or how often he swoops back and forth before landing back on the ground is random, so very unfortunate pattern there. Now let's see if I can get Mole Knight dead before he turns invincible a second time. It's, again, much harder than I made it look at the time, so I really doubt I'll be able to do it again. And indeed, it's looking bad. I'd have to hit him 5 times right here, and instead I got hit myself, so I only hit him once. So yeah, this is what that looks like, as he does this big lava attack. And then he was about to go back on the ground immediately after, but I can just Staff of Striking to help prevent that, so that's fine. Finally, here's Shovel again. Only this time the floor is not destructible, so it's much harder to get Shovel into a little pit where you can camp him out easily. But at the same time, it's also harder for him to camp you out because it's easier to chase him around because we have better horizontal mobility than he does. So it's sort of a give and a take on the changed terrain for this fight. Broadly, I don't know, broadly I'd say it's probably easier, but that's also because we have the Staff of Striking now, and that is a big help as well. Everything that made this fight horrid the first time still makes it horrid now. Oh, that was a pretty nice little sequence there. Oh, I'm kind of cooking. Let me cook. This fight is just still very difficult and very slow. Just this fight alone takes almost a minute, when most of the rest of them are like 30 seconds or under. There we go. But that did go pretty well overall. Pretty happy with that. So then there's a long, lengthy cutscene here. Shovel Knight baps us again, and then we basically get the little cutscene that Shovel Knight gets in this part of the game, where you can help the whole Order of No Quarter back up, and then they all have little bits of dialogue for you. But as it turns out, in canon, Shovel Knight is an ass. and he just leaves. Which you can do in the game, but, you know, incredibly rude. But then Plague Knight, having the ability to fly, just leaves. I don't know why Propeller Knight didn't think of that, but whatever. And that's Tower 2 done. So that only leaves one more level, Tower 3, which is really just the final boss. There's a tiny little bit of platforming before, not much. First, we have this little room that's guarded by a possessed wall, where bits of brick are going to come flying at us from every angle. It sounds much worse than it is. You can kind of just jump back and forth, and you probably won't get hit too much, but even beyond that, if you just use bursts, it's very easy to basically block, basically block the bricks, and just not have to really worry about it. Then we fall down into the dark, and there'll be an actual platforming section where these platforms come up out of the dark and you have to land on them, but you can kind of just jump from there, and now you've already cleared the whole thing and you can ignore it. Again, this was much worse as Shovel Knight than it is as Plague, so that's very convenient for us here. And that brings us to the final boss, which is a sequence of 3 bosses. First the Enchantress, then the Plague of Shadows, and then the Essence. I forget what it's called. Corrupted Essence or some such thing. It's not that, but it's something like that. The Enchantress is mostly fine. This is a boss that was designed for Shovel Knight, and Plague Knight is much better at dealing a bunch of damage in rapid succession, at least on flying targets, because Shovel Knight could still use the Chaos Sphere, which would be really good in most cases, but not so against the Enchantress. So this is really not a very difficult boss. You kind of just hit her with stuff until she dies. She spends some time under the dirt where it's hard to hit her, but you just wait that out and then you just kill her the rest of the way. It's really not all that bad. I missed a lot of my staff hits there, so that definitely is making this take longer than it's supposed to. Oh goodness. Luckily you do get a full heal in between all of these bosses. So the damage that I take there doesn't super matter. Then we get another cutscene where the Enchantress's essence gets absorbed into the potion, and then we fight the Plague of Shadows, the unstable power of the potion, plus Mona showing up, trying to help Plague Knight, causes this sort of manifestation of Plague Knight's insecurities. We get to fight Plague Knight. We're playing Plague Knight, we get to fight Plague Knight. It's cool. It's dope. And the Plague of Shadows actually uses Plague Knight's sprite shape from the Shovel Knight campaign, the boss sprite, rather than his own, which is slightly larger. There's a cool bits of symbolism here. It's pretty cool. But yeah, this fight is also it's sort of like the Shovel Knight fight in that he just jumps around and you kind of have to go catch him. But it's much less bad because he does have a tendency to stand still at times. He's much more predictable. He doesn't get knocked back by your attacks, and so on and so forth. It's much easier to just know sort of where he is for at least a couple of seconds at a time, and to get good damage in while you can. The entire terrain here is destructible, and it just keeps going forever, down and down and down, until it's dead. And so you can really dig yourself into some nasty corners like this one, where he ended up there, and I just really didn't have a good way to reach him. So that's quite unfortunate. But also, if you just stand still in one of those corners while you're above him, then he just kind of melts. So there's again a give and a take to that as well. This is not a particularly good Plague fight so far. Not at all. But there we go. With the Plague of Shadows defeated, the power of the potion coalesces into this essence creature. Again, I forget the name of the boss. This fight does not last very long. We are a minute out from the end at this point, a bit more maybe. This fight is not very difficult. You just hit that sphere, from above though, specifically, and then that opens up the creature's mouth, and then you just hit that, and then you repeat. And it's quite easy, it's quite fast. I remember really struggling with this fight when I was playing it casually because I just didn't fully understand what the mechanics were. But, yep, he's dead. It was a bit less than a minute, not a bit more. But yeah, Mona's back because we fixed everything. And then, oh my goodness, we don't need to use the potion. We're already good the way we are. Plague Knight is such a cute little guy. I love this silly little plot. It's like it's flimsy, right? It's thin as hell, but it's good. And then it turns out that the Magicist and Percy are also seeing each other, and it's great. and everybody has kisses and heart-shaped chocolates for Valentine's Day. That's Shovel Knight Plague of Shadows. I think that's like canon. I don't know. Anyway, sort of improvised commentary as always. I don't have all that much time to do, you know, elaborately edited videos. I think this one's in like 3 parts or something, the commentary for it. But it's a game near and dear to my heart. I mean, I said this at the start, but Shovel Knight is just an absolute classic, right? Instant classic, I think 2014. I played it when it first came out and was just instantly in love with it. And I've spent a lot of time with it since. Can't believe it took me this long to speedrun the game, honestly, but I don't know, it never did it for me before, but it does now. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm not all that good at it yet, but I will get better over the course of the next few months, I expect. So if this does get into to BSG, by the way, the schedulers should know that the estimate for this is likely to drop a bit. I'll probably submit it at an hour, but it's likely to drop a bit lower than that by just a couple minutes over the course of the next few months, if it does get in. So just, you know, keep that in mind, I guess. Doesn't usually matter very much though. It's also a very volatile game, to be fair. If I just like die an extra time at a really inopportune time, then you could lose another minute or 2 again. So it's like, maybe don't worry about it that much on second thought. Anyway, it's a very fun game. It's very fun to speedrun as well. I intend to maybe learn the others as well. At least Spectre I'm interested in, and Shovel as well. King Knight a little less so, but also a little bit. It would be really fun to learn all 4 of them and then to go to an event and bring just all 4 Shovel Knight campaigns back to back as a run. That could be really sick. I don't know that I'm actually doing that, but it's something I'm thinking about for maybe in like a year or 2. For right now though, I'm perfectly happy just grinding this one down a bit more. I'm probably also submitting sort of my usual suspects of Metroid Dread, Splatoon 3, maybe Super Roboy. Just, you know, you miss every shot you don't take. But I'm also hoping that I might be doing some Super Metroid stuff. But we'll see. That'll be for a bit later. For now, shoutouts to Breadpan for being the GOAT and having an insane time in this game. Holy shit. But I think that's really all I've got to say. It's been kind of a rambling sort of a video, which, yeah, I mean, that's how it is, right? Again, I don't have the time to do the whole convoluted editing process. It takes absolutely forever. And I do like the sort of rambly style. It is its own kind of fun, and I like to think that I'm a good rambler. But yeah, I don't know. Obviously didn't get to talk maybe about everything that I would have liked to talk about. It's also such a very short run. It's only about an hour. And it's such a great game, you know. We don't even get to see half of what makes this game so good. Like, we don't even get to see bars. So, like, what is this game without the bars? Come on now. Ridiculous. Bars percent win. That sounds like it'd be a good category, actually, for Plague of Shadows specifically. Just beat the game, but recruit bars. That actually sounds kind of good. I might do that. That could be a decent, donation goal, actually. Not the worst idea. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I think that's all that I've got to say. So, this has been Plague of Shadows Any Percent. I've been Detail74, and I'll be back with another game, hopefully shortly. I want to submit multiple things to BSG, so I'll catch you in the next one, I suppose. Have a good one.